All right. So thank you for coming. I will mention that April is World Autism Awareness / Acceptance Month. So that is a really nice thing to be aware of for today. And I'm grateful that I have this opportunity. Thank you to Erlanger Methodist Church for having me, as well as Brewburger for the awesome refreshments. And I'm going to start off by mentioning if you need to fidget, move around a little bit, please feel free. I get the feeling. And I also hope that by sharing my experiences, while I hope that I'm helping people, I can only speak for myself. That is my disclaimer. So let me tell you a little bit about who I am. I recently moved to this area. Well, now it's not as recent, but last year I moved from the Philadelphia area, and I am now in Erlanger. But yeah, so I am also a major dog lover. That is my dog. She passed away unfortunately in 2012, but she will always be my best friend forever. I'm also a hamster lover. Yes, I had about 8 hamsters over the course of my life growing up, and I do consider myself to be the crazy hamster lady. So I memorized The Lion King, 1994 version, very important, when I was about 5. If you give me a line from the movie, I'll either correct you or I will continue that movie throughout till the end from the line that you've given me. So yeah, I'm also a major fan of Dakota Fanning, who is an actress and a producer. So I don't know if anyone has heard of her or seen some of her films. One of her movies is called Please Stand By. It's actually about her character. Her character is actually she portrays someone who's on the autism spectrum. So it's an interesting take on it. It's meant to be like a comedy as well, but it's very interesting. And then her sister Elle did a great job in another movie that's not as well known called Phoebe in Wonderland. She did a wonderful job portraying like a meltdown in that movie. And so yeah, I just figured that I would mention a little bit of that. But who am I? Clearly. I am the author of the book called I Have Asperger's, which, yes, it's a little bit outdated now, but I self-published it about 10 years ago. And it's basically a blog that I wrote about my everyday life, and then I added sections looking back over what I wrote, what might have been the same, what had changed, how I felt about it, and I just kind of turned that into a book. And I'm also a public speaker. I did a TEDx talk about self-stimming, which I can kind of explain a little bit of that later. But I have also presented at several fundraising events as well as different trainings. So I am obviously a major autism advocate. This started back when I was diagnosed as on the autism spectrum at around 15 years old, back in 2005. And yes, it took a little while for several reasons, but at this point, I'm here. I'm able to speak for myself, thankfully, and I was also able to eventually graduate from high school, and I did attend a little bit of college for early childhood education. But then, that said, what does an autism diagnosis really mean? It means that I tend to be very hypersensitive to the world around me, which includes having some issues with eating. I have a different way of processing, and this can often cause challenges with communication. And it means that I deal with meltdowns on occasion, and note that these meltdowns are not the same thing as tantrums. So let's start with the hypersensitivities, which I'm going to play from my phone because the audio will not work on there. But hopefully this will work. Let me know if there are any issues or if I need to adjust the volume.
As you sit in this room,
Hang on.
it's
Started a little too late.
right now, as you sit in this room, it's very easy for you to focus on my voice and understand every word that I'm saying. For you, it's the only noise in the room. This is not how children with autism hear. They hear everything. Sounds that you may not even notice they hear. And they hear them all at the same volume. So as you listen to and are able to focus on my voice, they hear the fan blowing. They hear doors closing. They hear the wait staff clearing tables. They hear the woman 10 feet away rummaging through her purse. They hear a fire truck outside. They hear people walking to their seats. They hear someone pouring a glass of water. They hear the wind. They hear a car alarm going off. They hear someone coughing. They hear a cell phone ringing. They hear a baby crying. If this is what your world sounded like every minute of every day, what would you do to cope? Would you run? Would you scream? Would you rock back and forth? Would you fight to get away? Would you jump up and down and flap your hands? Would you bite your cheek until it bled? Would you hit yourself in the head? What would you do to make it stop? What would you do to make it stop? Our kids are always doing the best that they can. Always. To cope with a world that they simply don't hear the same way that we do.
So, yeah, that is, first of all, not just for children, but all ages. That doesn't really differ between, child versus adult. I think I have personally learned over the years, I've gotten used to it, but that doesn't mean that it has stopped at being like that. But there are sounds that can be overwhelming and painful. Like I said, have learned to cope over years of time, but like inconsistent or nails on a chalkboard type of sounds, like, maybe you've got a leaf blower or you have a vacuum cleaner, chainsaws, I'm sorry. But a great example of, how strong my hearing can be. When I was younger, I was sitting at like a dining room table, which was connected to a living room. And on the other side, I swore, I was like, okay, I hear music playing. And my mom, I told my mom that. And she's like, what music? Like, what music is playing? I'm like, I don't know. And I followed the noise, and I opened up a drawer on that other side of the room. And I'm going to be aging myself now, but I pulled out a Walkman with headphones connected to them. And the radio was playing through the headphones of the Walkman inside the drawer on the other side of the room when the drawer was shut. And that's what I was able to hear. So yeah, that's how sensitive I am to sounds. So then we have this things like smells, which, could be perfumes, body odor, cigarette smoke, incense. You've got cleaners and detergents. All this stuff, is something that it can overwhelm my senses. Touch, you have people kicking a chair or, even just, shifting in the chair, I could feel that. Or a cell phone vibrating on a table. I can also hear that. Bed sheets and towels, like the texture of them, hot or cold surfaces, and like, for example, car seats and playground equipment, benches in the park, wind from the car windows being rolled down, All these things I'm, really feeling and getting overwhelmed by sometimes. Sights, you've got flickering lights. I'm not keeping up with this. I need to change that. Okay. We got flickering lights or even fluorescent lights or just bad wiring. Like literally, those are the bane of my existence. Those bulbs that are like just barely screwed in and not really connected well. And crowds and movement. So if it's a big crowd and people are moving around a lot, I'm just kind of going to be a little turtle and try and hide in my shell. But what helps with all of this? So we've got, for the sounds, I might use earplugs or headphones if it's going to last a while, like not the kind of headphones that play music necessarily, but the kind that, just block out noise. Um, and a white noise machine or a fan or headphones, like with playing music. But that has to be my choice of music. It can't be like somebody else going, oh, here, listen to this. Nope, not doing it. And it's usually on repeat, by the way. Smells, you've got unscented soaps and cleaners. Car air on the recycle setting. So, you just kind of roll up the windows and stick the recycle button on, and it's like, okay, now I'm not going to be smelling the exhaust or cigarette smoke that someone's, holding one out the window, cut grass, things like that while I'm going along, or worse, skunks. Yeah. And otherwise, just kind of quickly moving away from the sources of the smell. Like you won't see me in a grocery store just wandering through the detergent aisle. Trust, I'm going to be booking it. So yeah. For touch, we have tagless and seamless clothing. Something to sit on, like a favorite blanket for traveling, or like a towel or something, especially, in a car with leather seats. You're going to want to put a towel down for that. Sometimes longer sleeves, sometimes shorter sleeves are better because, different people are going to have different preferences. Some people really like that tight feeling, and other people are like, no, I need to be less constrained and have that, looser clothing. But just remember, everyone everything will differ for each, individual. So, and sights, you've got sunglasses or dimmed or softer lighting. So sometimes sunglasses will be worn indoors. Sometimes it's actually necessary for that. It's also good for when you're in a crowd of people. If I just put on my sunglasses and I kind of go through, it kind of helps me to focus on what's in front of me and not be as overwhelmed by everything going on peripheral vision wise. And a little tip, if you find a product that works well, please keep getting it. You don't need to get the sale item. You don't need to get, the cheaper version of it. I mean, granted, it might help you financially to do that, but it's probably going to go to waste because it's not going to be used. If you find that same exact item that, is preferred in the clearance section, you buy it in bulk, because obviously it's going to be discontinued pretty soon. And you have to start looking for a replacement to that specific type of item, which usually involves looking at ingredients list or materials made of, and you can also research like the company that had bought it out. So it's like that might help you to better understand, okay, this is the specific product that I'm looking for. Did they change this? And if not, let's look at the ingredients and see if we can find a similar product. You can also take photos. Take photos of the products you like and the tags and the ingredients list, things, all of that stuff, because they might get worn out or get lost, or you might toss it and then they go, no, I really liked that shampoo. And you go, well, I can't find one that they're going to tolerate now, So the ingredients list, And it could also be, well, it looks different, but it's the exact same ingredients. There is a lot going on, but there's also one more struggle related to the hypersensitivity aspect, which is eating issues. So some people may think that I'm being like picky, and I put that in quotes because I really don't like the negative connotation that it has. Uh, and a better way of putting it, I think, at this point, a friend of mine actually mentioned, was that it could be a hang up with food. Because I'm not personally being picky about it, but I have a hang up with the food. So, but sometimes, there's a lot of factors that can contribute to why I'm either eating more versus less. So that includes things like textures of the food. I may love spaghetti sauce, but I can't stand large chunks of tomatoes. Or maybe I don't like the slimy feeling of yogurt. There's also crunchy, sticky, wrinkly, lots of other textures. And all of that can contribute to whether or not it's something that I feel comfortable consuming. Um, Smells and tastes. I don't care how many times you ask me to try mushrooms. I will not put something that smells like dirt into my mouth. Sorry, parents. Sorry, parents. And if I do that, it's not going to stay there for very long. I'm just going to say that. Yeah. Um, but then there's also things like anxiety and stress. I won't be able to feel hungry when I'm stressed. This is a different feeling from nausea. Okay. I, when I'm nauseous, I can still eat. But when when I'm anxious or stressed out, I feel like I can't eat. It's a physical, of almost like it's something that keeps me from doing it. And it's not that it hurts my stomach, but it hurts my mouth. So medication, um, they can really impact appetite. All right. When I was very young, I stopped growing completely, fell off the growth chart. Um, and then finally in elementary school, I started a growth hormone therapy to help me gain a little bit more height because I was literally under, I think, 3 feet. Maybe I was under 4 feet, but I was short. And this growth hormone therapy definitely made me grow, but it also caused an increase in my appetite. I was, eating other kids' lunches at school, and I wasn't gaining any weight, but I was really hungry because I was growing so much. And then in middle school, I was started on a medication for my ADHD symptoms. And that medication suppresses my appetite. So I went from eating everything to only eating when my medication wore off. People thought I was refusing to eat because, clearly there was something going on because I was eating all the time and now all of a sudden I'm not eating. There must be something wrong with me. I started on medication, I'm sorry. But to force someone to eat without understanding that medication can suppress the appetite, just something to be aware of. And by the way, I was also eating in the middle of the night. So I eat like 3 dinners now. But then finally, there's also the plating of the food. Things like touching, so juices bleeding into other foods. Don't you dare put a pickle on my plate. Not going to happen. If there's a regular way to plate something versus an unusual way of plating it, you have the sandwich on the left and the chips on the right, and then the next day it's another way around, and it's like, that's not how it's supposed to be. And using the wrong plate or cup. I have a specific water bottle that I have been using for years. I try to keep it clean. I got a couple of replacement lids over the years, and I am very, very That is my water bottle. I cannot change my water bottle because I have tried to, and it doesn't feel the same to me. So I don't like drinking out of a different water bottle. I can drink out of like a plastic bottle, but a disposable one. But if it's a reusable one, I have my water bottle. Um, so what helps with all these issues? You've got allowing people to smell the food cooking and let me choose if I'm going to try it or not. Don't force it, but don't deny it either. Um, you have a plate with my favorite food on it, and then you have a separate dish with something that I might be interested in trying, and it is put over here. You have my regular plate, you have this dish over here, and you specifically say, okay, you don't have to eat this. It is only sitting here. That's all it is. You're welcome to try it if you would like. That's it. Here is your food. And it could take 1 year. It could take 1 week. It could take 5 years. You don't know when it could happen. But one day, I might reach over just to give it a taste, just to try it. And I might not like it, and that might be the end, or I might go, ooh, that's really good, I'll take another. And all of a sudden, I've added a new food to my diet. But I don't have an unhealthy relationship with that food because I wasn't trying it when I wasn't ready to, you know? And I have a friend, I love this story, who has a kid who loves toast and he loves peanut butter, but absolutely hated peanut butter on toast, okay? One day, he gave my friend this like little sentence strip, which is, picture communication. And it had a picture of toast and a picture of peanut butter on it. And I happened to be on the phone with her at the time. And she goes, what am I supposed to do with this? I don't want to waste my peanut butter and bread. And I know he doesn't like this. Like, he's never eaten this before. I know he doesn't like this. I've given it to him before and he hasn't liked it. And I said, at this point, you got to try it. You give it to him. And she was really hesitant, but she trusted me and decided to give this child peanut butter on toast. The kid ate the entire slice and asked for it again and has continued to eat it to this day. So needless to say, my friend was shocked. But it worked, like if they're asking for it, absolutely. But it's also the type of thing where you don't deny it and you don't force it. Offer the choice of food that I'm going to like and I've eaten in the past too. So it's also easier to drink something than it is to chew and swallow an entire meal. If you have a toothache, you'd rather, not put things into your mouth to chew on. So turn it into a liquid that's easier to just kind of take a big gulp of and just swallow it whole. Milk, juice, water. Sometimes you can do some add some flavoring or certain powders for getting it more healthy. But it's really challenging to work with that type of stuff because sometimes it doesn't dissolve very well. And I can feel that grittiness, or I can see the cloudiness in the liquid or whatever. So that's why I usually go for like milk with something because it's harder to tell. Usually it'll be like, a chocolatey milk powder with protein, something like that. But you always try to do the liquid to get something into the body. And then, you can always try like, a shake, a Pedialyte, Pediasure, sweet drinks as a last resort. But my go-to is honestly milk or like a juice with, 100% juice type of thing rather than something that's all sugar. But a smoothie could work. You have to be careful with chunks of like, seeds or fruit pieces that are in it. But depending on the person, it could be like, okay, I really like this part of it, but the ice is too, like big or whatever. Or it might be, I really like this, but I don't like these little chunks of the strawberry seeds. Because like I love a strawberry smoothie, but I can't stand those seeds. Um, so what I may end up doing is going, okay, I have a smoothie and I take like, strawberry yogurt instead of actual strawberries. So it doesn't have the seeds, but it still has the flavor. It might be a little thicker, so I might need to like, add more milk to it, stuff like that. But there's always a way to kind of work around it. And sometimes you just gotta give it, a little bit of time and patience. It's like, okay, now I'm getting a little hungrier. I really do need to get something into me. But there are times when I am hungry and I will not eat. I can't. It's truly, they say like, okay, well, just wait till they're hungry. They'll eat when they're hungry. No matter what. It'll be broccoli. They'll eat it when they're hungry. No, I won't. I'm not going to, because I've gotten to that point and then I just have a meltdown and I can't eat. So it doesn't work that way for me. All right, now we're going to do some quick math. So if you have 5 apples and you use 3 of them to make a pie, you're not allowed to answer this, by the way. How many apples do you have left? Now, quick, shout it out or use your hands, whatever. How many? You can do this math. Come on. You've got this. 5 minus 3. That's the problem with quick math, yeah. Okay, so you have 5 apples and you use 3 of them to make a pie. There you go. Okay. However, I will say you've got an interesting way of looking at it, because most people will say 2, right? You're right. My answer is that there's 5. 3 of them are in the pie. So, am I wrong? Was he wrong? Were you guys wrong? Nobody was. We were all right, but we had a different answer. And nobody knew why we were answering the way we were. We just have different answers. We have to explain ourselves. How did you get that answer? That's not right, But that's okay. Like, we think one way, right? If you have someone who thinks a different way, it doesn't make sense to you. But so you have a different way of processing, and some people, might be thinking this different way, and they might struggle with like instructions because of that misunderstanding and miscommunication and that different way of thinking. Um, there's an example that's, my parents used to say, "Come home by the time the porch lights were on for houses in the neighborhood," and I was like, "Okay, I can do that." Started getting dark. I saw one come on. One. The street lights were all on, but just one porch light. I was like, okay, I have time. My parents were mad. They were like, "We told you to come home when the porch lights came on." And I said, "Okay, but that one isn't on." "Well, they're not home, and it was just like this weird thing. So then they were like, "Okay, you know what? You got to come home by this time on your watch." There's no way around that one. If I forget my watch, that's on me, So, and I actually started setting my watch early so that I would make sure I was home on time. And then, yeah, people got confused as to what time it was because I kept telling them, "Oh, it's, such and such time." They're like, "But your watch says it." No, don't look at it. But okay. So the other idea is, you might tell me to clean my room. And that might not be specific enough for me. So should I dust and sweep? Am I, washing the windows? Do I even like pick up your clothes might be too vague. Okay. So where do I put my clothes? In the drawer? Should I pick up all of my clothes even if they aren't dirty? You know? Um, and then it gets to the point where you have half baby steps. So it's like, okay, well, I'm a little too overwhelmed to pick up all the clothes right now. I look and I'm seeing clothes all over the place. Where do I start? Like I'm overwhelmed. I don't know where to go first. Okay, let's start with the socks. You look for the socks only and you pick up those socks. Okay, well, there's a sock right there. There's a sock right there. Here are all the socks. Where do I put them? Okay, you put them right in this hamper, whatever. Okay, what's next? Okay, well, now you're going to find all the shirts. Okay, well, there's only one shirt. No, wait, there's one more. Okay, got all the shirts. Okay, put them in the hamper. Got it. Okay, now you put the hamper over in this corner, whatever. Shut the lid. That's for laundry day. Good job picking up all the clothes. Move on to something else in the room or reward yourself for picking up the clothes. But what can help with processing in that different way? So you want to be obviously specific and blunt with what's going on and consistent. Consistency also helps. So you're going to say, in 5 minutes, I want you to do this. Instead of saying, well, we're going to do this really soon. Soon doesn't give me anything. Soon could be, okay, is that in 5 minutes? Is that in an hour? Is that tomorrow? I don't know. What am I supposed to do with this information? So I'm just going to keep bugging you and bugging you and bugging you, you know? Use the same steps each time and follow the same rules. The same rules should always apply. So you're saying, put your dirty clothes into this laundry basket. And dirty means that even if it's been washed, if it has come out of that drawer after being washed, it is now considered to be dirty. Because it might be that it fell on the floor and you don't want to wear something that was on the floor all night, you know? I wouldn't. I'm just saying I wouldn't. I would want to make sure it stays in the drawer. That's all. But one instruction at a time, multi instructions, too much for me. I'm going to forget the third one by the time I'm done with the first. I have a great memory, but it doesn't work when I'm doing things. So wait until the person has completed the first task before telling them to do the next step, because I'm really focused on that first step. I really am. And the half baby steps are really important because I do get so overwhelmed with the bigger picture of things that it's really hard for me to focus on that smaller content and break it down on my own. So helping me to break it down is really a good way to help me to get things done. And then explaining why, the actual reason in a simple way. Tell me why what I am doing is important if you can, you know? Like, well, we don't want to be, dirty people who are stinky and, we need to get a shower, you know? Like, we need to make sure our clothes are clean. And I've had, a lot of people, have told me to do things, but they didn't say why. And if I had known why, it would have given me more motivation to actually, complete the task. I need to exercise. I know I need to lose weight. I get that. But why am I going to take a walk? Why do I really take a walk? Because taking a walk isn't going to make me lose weight right this second. But it's a good idea to take a walk because that's how I'm going to get to my mailbox. And I like the mail. So now I have a reason to go take a walk and a reason to walk back. And I'm also getting some steps in at the same time. You could also be like, oh, well, this is going to make you able to sleep tonight because you're getting some energy out. You're not just sitting around all day doing nothing, You're really getting some exercise, and that's going to help you to sleep better. That's a great reason why, all these types of things. And when a rule no longer applies, please tell me. Please. You don't have to ask to go to the bathroom in college. What? Oh, okay. Good to know. Wish someone would have told me that when I was in college the first day. Yeah. Um, that actually happened, yes. And I witnessed someone stand up and leave the classroom before that happened. And I just kind of watched them like wide eyed and I was like, are they going to get in trouble? Are they coming back? Are they going to be expelled for leaving the classroom? I had no idea. No one ever explained this stuff to me. So I just sat there because my whole life I was required to use a hall pass to do anything. And I had to raise my hand to go anywhere and ask, you know? And in college, no, you do what you want, but the consequences are going to be a little different. You know, you're going to find out that you missed a little bit of class to do that. And you might miss some content. And you might need to ask someone else for extra notes or whatever. You know, you got to explain all of this to me. And overall, just please be patient because someone is able to speak verbally, that doesn't mean that they can easily process and communicate their thoughts correctly. Um, you know, it might be that I'm standing up here talking to you, doesn't mean I'm using the correct wording or the actual, you know, definitions that I mean to be using. It also doesn't mean that I'm going to understand what you're saying to me correctly. It might take a few back and forths, and even then, I might go home later, 3 hours later, 2 a.m., okay? And I'll be sitting there going, oh, that's what they meant. Yeah, and that's what I said. Ooh. Yeah, those moments have occurred all the time. So on that note though, if someone is nonverbal, please find alternate ways to allow the person to communicate. I have never been nonverbal personally, but I have tried to not speak for about a day. And it's really hard to insert yourself into everyday conversation. And it makes life really frustrating when you don't have that voice and that verbal voice. So, I mean, people were having, you know, inside jokes. They were talking about things, and I was just sitting there going, I literally wanted to say something, but they had gone so quickly in that conversation, I had no time to write anything down or tap on their shoulder or, you know, try and find what I wanted to say on like a device or whatever. It just went so quick. And there was no way to include myself into that conversation and say, oh, remember when this happened? And they could be like, oh, yeah, I remember that. Nope, there was no time for that. They had already moved on. So it wasn't even part of the conversation topic anymore. So use picture icons, American Sign Language, augmentative alternative communication, even if it's just a different way of doing, you know, any kind of communication. Just remember that that's not going to stop them from trying to speak in the future. It's really just important that they have a way to speak or have a voice, I should say. And slow it down, be patient. It doesn't mean they don't understand things. It doesn't mean they don't want to. It's more a matter of they don't have the opportunity with you, you know? And they don't know how to get it across in a way that is accessible. So, also, parents are going to need more support with that. I mean, half of these parents are like, okay, I know there are other ways to do this, but how in the world does this work? And they get sent home with, you know, this little bit of, you know, a device or, you know, other types of communication. They go, okay, but how do I do this? How do I apply it? How do I use it? I am so overwhelmed. you know? Um, and it's too much to deal with without a little bit more support, I think. I think they're just, screaming for help at that point. So, because they want to help, but they don't know how. They need more instruction. Um, and also note that the inability to communicate can trigger meltdowns and cause some behavioral problems. I knew of someone who was like holding up a pretzel and told like a hungry nonverbal child to say pretzel in order to get it. And of course, this led to a meltdown. And then they got upset that it led to a meltdown. And I was like, I know you want to hear this person talking to you. I get that. I know you want to hear their voice. But that's not that's nothing. Like that's not going to do it. It's only going to make the situation worse. And yes, there's clearly a meltdown there. Not a tantrum, because that brings us to a tantrum is rare, okay? It depends on the individual, but it's basically when someone says, I don't want to do this. I really don't want to. Like, I just don't. I'm not happy about it. I'm just gonna sit here and stomp my feet and say, I don't want to do it. A meltdown is, I can't do this. I'm struggling to do this and I can't do it. And you're telling me to do something that I cannot do. And it's making me frustrated and I don't know how else to tell you I can't do it, That's more of a meltdown. So a meltdown is beyond my control. And this is mainly, I'm more referring to the children side of things now. Sometimes a meltdown is beyond control of adults as well, but adults have a lot more responsibility that they need to be aware of and can lead to, bigger and bigger consequences, which is why, for children, we need to teach them the skills on how to cope with those meltdowns on their own before they get to that point so that it doesn't become that big of a consequence, if that makes sense. Because it's exhausting for everyone involved. Like I'll have to rest for a few hours after a meltdown. Sometimes it'll end the day. It'll be like, okay, I had a meltdown at noon. I might be okay by 3. I can't guarantee it. It might just be that I'm staying until 6 and going to bed, Sometimes I might be able to, okay, I'll just go take a walk real quick and I'll come back in and I'll go to bed, whatever it is. But it might be that I have to cancel something because I can't control that. I can't control that emotion at that point. And it's not safe for me to go somewhere and be around other people when I have that going on. So, sometimes people get really frustrated and they say, well, you're canceling last minute, what's going on? I'm like, personal reason, like I'm having a meltdown here and I can't control it and I'm really sorry, but like this is out of my control right now. I'm trying to cope with it, but sometimes it's unavoidable. Please do not punish a child as much when they are having a meltdown, like in the middle of it. Now, if they, have, are starting to get physical or, verbally, hurting other people, then you can say that's not okay. That's not safe. We need to redirect that. And they could be responsible, for cleaning things up, but they, shouldn't really need to worry as much about it in that moment. Like, so for example, if I, come in and I have a stack of papers and I'm really upset and I just shove them on the floor. At work, yeah, that might be a problem. But by that point, I should know not to do that. I should know not to go towards those papers and throw them on the floor. I should remove myself before I get to that point. When I'm a kid, I don't know that yet. I don't have that coping skill. I don't have that knowledge. And I need to be taught, hey, you're having a meltdown. We need to work on the coping. We need to remove ourselves and get to a safe space and, calm ourselves down a bit. It's not our fault when that's happening. but we need to make sure things are safe when it is happening. So, for example, if someone really wants something over, a snack or whatever, and you say, okay, this is going to trigger a meltdown. Let me bring you over to this room. We have no snack left. I know that you're going to have a meltdown because of it. We're safe in this room. We're away from other people. And we are going to try and work on our coping skills. I know you want the snack. I get it. I know it's upsetting. And they're going to keep, getting upset. We try to redirect things. We try to give them the time and space, to calm down. But the main idea is keeping them safe. And then we focus on, what's triggering it as well. Because that's the best way to help deal with it, is figuring out what's triggering it in the first place. And you try to prevent it from occurring. So again, if like you're out of that favorite snack and someone, keeps asking for that snack and then sees the empty wrapper of the snack, they're just going to keep going in that endless loop of wanting the snack and being reminded that there is nothing left. So that would trigger a meltdown. So throw away the wrapper immediately. Get them to the safe space, maybe redirect, or you try to avoid it, from actually triggering the person, always trying to redirect. And if it gets past the redirect point, which is, sometimes you just or have escalated, that's when you need the time, the time and space and safety mode. But if it is completely unavoidable, you just got to be patient. You got to listen. Help me find a safe space to express myself. Weighted blankets can be helpful. Sometimes they make people more anxious because it's too much weight and it makes them feel claustrophobic. But for me, it's calming and helps me to relax. Soothing sounds or music sometimes help. And then we can do the stimming, which I don't know if you guys know what stimming is. So stimming is a repetitive behavior which helps me to self-regulate. So if someone is like, tapping their foot or, maybe doing a little bit of this, that's all stimming. My stim happens to be that I hit my head against my pillow to get to sleep and to wake up, and in the middle of the night when I am sleeping. Been doing that since I was 3 months old. Yep. I don't know how. I think it was like the moment I was able to move my head, I think I started doing it, I guess. But yeah, I literally, there is not a time that I don't remember not doing it, So that's, kind of the idea of stimming. And it hurts when I can't stim. It physically hurts my body because it kind of feels like if someone were to tell you not to move for a whole hour, how would that make you feel? A little antsy, a little uncomfortable. That's how it feels for me when I cannot stim. It helps me to process and self-regulate a bit. And then we have the stimming, and as well as time and space. So time and space is, really the way to deal with the meltdown itself. And also sticking with a routine, that really helps. Routine can make it so that I understand what to expect and prepare myself to handle the situations for each day. When a routine is messed up, so is my ability to handle the situations. So it really does, if I know what's going on, I know how to prepare myself, and, I actually schedule in time for myself for those moments. So it's like, if I know that if I have a doctor's appointment that afternoon, I'm not scheduling much else that day because I need to prepare for the doctor's appointment. That's going to take me at least an hour or so, maybe half an hour. And then I'm going to have, the driving aspect. And then I'm going to have, after the appointment, I'm going to need to chill, So I have a lot of time blocked out for this appointment. And yeah, some other people might be able to be like, oh, wow, that's a lot of time for an appointment. It's like, because I know myself, and if I don't schedule that time, I'm going to have a meltdown. And then I'm not going to get anything done the next day, So it's a lot going on, but it really does help to have that routine in place so that I know what I'm going to be able to handle. Um, and then at that point, I do want to say thank you for coming. And I want to give another shout out to Brewburger for sponsoring the refreshments for today. And I really hope that this was helpful. And if anyone has any questions, please feel free. Thank you.